po implementohet bankat, po kalojnë një arkitekturë open banking, ku kanë hapur serviset e tyre në mjet API dhe shumë kompani të ndekut po fillojnë ta përdorin ato shërbime duke ofruar e-wallets, QR payments, shumë shërbime. Nga ana tjetër, SEPA të filluar të implementohet. Ka shumë zhvillime ku ne mendojmë që një themel që transmeton standarde dhe praktika të sigurisë kibernetike si OWASP është një domosdoshme. Misioni I OWASP është një komunitet I hapur global që punon për të më mirë ta bëjmë anglisht to power secure software nëpërmjet edukimit, toolsave dhe bashkëpunimit nëpërmjet komunitetit. Ideja është të krijojmë një urë midis komunitetit lokal dhe atij global të OWASP. Në bazë të tij mund të japësh një ide apo të mirë të OWASP se do të qenë një nga kontribuesit.
OWASP është një organizatë vullnetare edhe ka vite, një vite e para të 2000, edhe ideja e OWASP-it është si komunitet krijoj standarde ndërkombëtare që janë interchangeable në çdo vend botës. Për shembull, ndërtuar aplikacione për tesare, në të shpeskuar, OWASP dhe SBS, adoptimin e inteligjencës artificiale në Shtetet e Bashkuara, OWASP Top 10 for AI. E tjerë. Do të bësh një software assurance maturity level, OWASP. Do të bësh DevSecOps maturity model, OWASP. Ideja është që përpara ka të shkojë open source Open Web Application Security Project, unë të shohë worldwide, sepse çdo gjë është web applications, kemi mobile applications, kemi middleware, dhe OWASP krijon këto metoda, requirements, e tjerë për çdo ndërtim aplikacioni. Gjithashtu OWASP krijon dhe tools. Tools janë gjithmonë open source, janë gjithmonë falas, janë gjithmonë nga komuniteti. Për shembull kemi DAST, Dynamic Application Security Testing, ZAP, OWASP-it, kemi dependency check për supply chain, dependency check nga OWASP, e tjerë. Do flasim çik më gjatë, po ideja e OWASP-it është në çdo vend botës të ketë non-secure software. Dhe çike vështirë të është non-secure software sepse unë si një developer asnjëherë nuk ka software për bugs. Security problems and security bugs. So ideja e OWASP-it është që tjetë komunitet, edhe tjetë falas. Do të thënë, ato që prodhon OWASP-it janë falas dhe të adoptohen nga kushdo në botë. Unë do t'ju rekomandoja që të bëhesh member I OWASP-it, me përveç toolsave, publikimeve, mënyrat se si të asesosh, se si bën DevSecOps, se si bën software assurance, e tjerë. Këto janë falas, por mund bëhesh edhe member I OWASP-it. Këto janë gjithë chapters në përballë, ime dhe në Veksalave. OWASP ka 2 evente në vit, një Global AppSec, këtë vit është në Washington DC, për 2 javë, dhe yours truly ka një prezantim atje. Dhe vitet tjetër është në Vjenë. Në qoftë se bëhesh member I OWASP-it, edhe për vendet si Shqipëria, vendet zhvillim është $20 në vit, ose $200 lifetime, pastaj bëhet 50 kur Shqipëria bëhet vend I zhvilluar si Evropa Perëndimore. Ke akses te GitHub-it, ke akses te tjera, ke free training, edhe mund bëhesh volunteer në OWASP Global ose OWASP EU. Edhe biletet kushtojnë $2,000 ose €2,000 varet. Edhe gjithë trajnimet, për shembull është një shoqëri Timonego që ka krijuar DevSecOps Maturity Model, prezanton këtë vit. Edhe trajnimin se si bëhet një DevSecOps Maturity Model për një organizatë, për consultancy, ajo është $1,700, po ti je volunteer në OWASP, është falas. Njëherë edhe biletat për të udhëtuar edhe hotelet janë falas nëse je member, edhe do të vullnetar. Mund hapësh OWASP chapter, që ose një lëviz në nuk e di në Trondheim, në Norvegji, mund ta krijosh atë të shëtit dhe. Okay? So mund bësh të ligë. Merr një Google Workspace të OWASP, një adres @owasp.org, e tjerë ka shumë benefite. Do ta këshilloj, bëni member, është vetëm $20. Benefitet trajnimet dhe më shumë se $20. Po është community.
Unik do theksoj edhe të gjitha materialet përse përket që ka shumë trim, dhe praktikat, standardet, i gjithë është një punë shumë madhe që bëhet nga vullnetarët dhe në fakt është një instrument shumë i mirë për të përmirësuar, për të mësuar dhe pse jo dhe për të tools janë falas që mund të përdorni për të siguruar aplikacionet tuaja.
Një gjëra të mira është OWASP Top 10. So Top 10 për development edhe mënyrat se si kontrollohen këto probleme. Katie is an expert. Katie's going to talk about it. Unë do ta kthej anglisht mas një çike se kemi dhe dalë me Katie bashkë, kështu që nuk flasim shqip. Po ideja është Top 10 të tregon se si të krijosh aplikacione që të jenë më të sigurta. Këto janë ato që OWASP e ndron çdo vit, edhe po të shohësh nga 2017 dhe 2021 këtë vit në Washington, do bëhet OWASP Top 10 2025, dhe mund ndryshojnë varet. Kjo janë se si perceptohet dhe sa attacks, sa sulme ka në aplikacione të ndryshme. ASVS, edhe Mobile ASVS, Application Verification Security Standard, janë standarde, requirements, bazë për ndërtuar aplikacione. Edhe thash, nga Mbretëria e Bashkuar në Singapur, në Shtetet Bashkuara në Brazil, shumë vete adoptojnë, o shumë organizata adoptojnë, sepse që më kam thënë njërën kur kanë qënë në universitet, don't reinvent the wheel. E bon komunitete e bon shumë më mirë. Pjesa tjetër, ke OWASP Juice Shop, që qoftë ti do të trajnohesh, është një aplikacion vonëm, që ti mund bësh trajnime dhe mund ta sulmosh, edhe mund të mësohesh ta mbrosh. Këtë e duhen e maintain OWASP në GitHub në web. Kemi edhe ca gjëra tjera, për shembull CycloneDX. CycloneDX është një nga dy formate, por formati më popular, më i përdorshëm, për ndarjen e software bill of material, cryptographic bill of material dhe other bill of material. Idan do flasim që më tepër për bills of materials edhe supply chain.
Unë ka qenë këto top 10 si
është publikim.
Një list, ose më mirë si është një standard awareness documentation ku shumë do thënë për të
basic development guide. Yes, e fundit fare, web security testing guide, që si e software tester, për security testing, është manual për testuar software. Ka dhe pasaj disa software tjera, si që është dependency track, ZAP ka lëvizur është gjysëm, në një kompani checkmarks ka marrë në lower development, po prapë është open source. Edhe do flasim edhe për AI kur të qasim pastaj, edhe AI development, top 10 edhe threat modeling guides. Edhe OWASP Threat Dragon për modelimin e sulmeve open source.
Për sa i përket Shqipërisë ne kemi dhe një discount nëse do jeni member apo jo.
Një $20 nga 50.
Po, do të thënë secili nga jo më bëhet member dhe është thjesht $20 në vit.
8000 veta që
do të shtoja diçka sepse duke qenë të gjithë vullnetarë dhe duke qenë se nuk janë të lidhur me kompani teknologjike, kjo është nga rregullat. Në fakt nuk kanë atë presionin komercial, dhe të gjithë puna që bëhet është do thoja shumë unbiased, pra nuk ka asnjë lloj le të themi presioni nga kompanitë të mëdha dhe është dhe cost effective. Çdo gjë që bëhet duhet të jetë praktike, unbiased dhe cost effective.
Këto në çdo event duhen vërë, sepse janë platform sponsors. Po po të shohësh gjithë të kompanitë nga kompanitë më të mëdha në botë, multi-billion revenue per year, edhe kompani që janë lider në vëndet për shumë Salesforce, Atlassian, kushrej developers që përdor Jira, Fortify, kemi AppDome për mobile security, e tjerë, të gjithë ta kontribojnë jo vetëm nga ana financiare, po nga ana teknologjike. Takohen bashkë, moshën pas 2 javësh, gati 5.000 veta, që drejtojnë një dhoma të ndryshme për AI, për application, për development, e tjerë. Kompanije që më përfaqësojnë, në fakt, ne jemi nga Red Hat-it, jo direkte, po kemi Idanin, ex-employees of Idan, Vero. They also some of Silver Corporate sponsors. But yeah, become a member. You get a G Suite account with so you don't have to put a full G Suite. That's minimum $2 në muaj. It's free me OWASP-in. Mund votosh, mund kërkosh gjëra që të ndihmojnë ty si kompani, etj. Next event.
Tu do jesh edhe në tim duket nga gjithë neve.
Like ma shtë. Okay. Ju sugjeroj ta follosh OWASP-in YouTube, sepse kanë shumë good talks. Next, I'm going to introduce some people.
It's a really big photo of my face. Yeah, should we go now? Nice to meet you all. My name is Katie. Thank you so much for coming. I've been at IBM for 7 years now. Started as a graduate and then I worked my way up to a global application security offering consultant. So a really short name, which is really, really easy to say. But essentially what we're doing is an awful lot of client delivery, making sure they have everything they need from an application security space, but then importantly within IBM as well, making sure we have all of the offerings we need and we have teams that are trained adequately to go and deliver all of that. And OWASP plays a huge role in that. I'm going to talk to you later today about threat modeling, and I'm going to talk a lot about OWASP through that because there are tools out there that help you with every single step, from finding the threats to start with, as Krasnik has just spoken about, the top 10 vulnerabilities, all the way through to calculating your risk, and then of course putting the controls in place as well. So there's plenty of support from OWASP with threat modeling, but that's a bit about me.
And Katie's a bit coy, but she's one of the best threat models I've ever met, so in for a treat. Next is me. Beard was a bit longer, less grey when I took this picture, but so I've been a developer. I started in development. I used to develop for the Ministry of Defence in the UK and NATO. Then I moved to teaching because why not? And then a few other bits and pieces. And I ended up, after building some financial systems and middleware security for the first open banking in Europe, then I moved to IBM because why not? Now I do a lot of DevSecOps transformations, a lot of AppSec. I advise governments and a few other bits and pieces of how to adopt strategy. One of my latest undertakings to working with AI and securing AI adoption. More on that later, but I'm really keen to talk to my friend Idan.
Can you hear me, or is it okay? Hey. Hi everyone. I'm Idan. I'm working today as a field CTO at Oligo. I guess a bit about my background. I started like Nick as a developer. Before that I was a pizza delivery guy, but let's leave that aside. Most of my time I went between different industries, from application security, so being a lot of the code side of the house, played a developer role. Then I moved a bit to the Runtime, so worked for a security company in the mobile security space, so trying to catch those advanced attacks. Then I moved to Snyk, went back to the code. Then I did a role in the last 4.5 years I led the solution engineering team in a startup called the Piro, which is in the ASPM space, trying to understand like what's the risk picture, how to prioritize my risks, etc. Like everything that in the day-to-day we falling apart when it comes to DevSecOps and AppSec. And then I fell in love again in Runtime. So I went to Oligo. We will talk a lot about cyber attack, how modern attacks look like, AI security, and I'll try not to say too much AI because it's very negativity. And thanks for Nick, Mario, Supervector, Startup and Bunny to host this year. So
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
So next, we have Katie.
Lovely. Thank you. You can all hear me fine. The mic works. Lovely. Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about exactly this. This is threat modeling. Just to get a little bit of an opinion of who's in the room. I'm assuming IT, but anyone here not working in IT or studying IT? Just to cover the obvious. Fantastic. And yourself, what do you work in?
I live in the US, so I work
Okay.
with AI startups in the US. So
Very, very impressive. I'm sure.
by affiliation.
Yeah, no, we'll have lots and lots of AI, so hopefully that'll be helpful for you. But anyone here a developer? Couple of people. Architects or engineers? Few people. And anyone here in the security space specifically? Nice, okay, so we've got a good varied audience. Fantastic, okay. And then finally, the most important, anyone here threat modeled before? You don't count it. Yeah. Not many. Okay, well hopefully we'll change that for you. So, what we're going to have a look at is a clicker that works. Oh, clicked the wrong way. That's a good start. Okay, so for the developers that are in the room, a lot of you are going to use many of these tools every single day. And that is traditional application development. I've probably missed hundreds on here. You can tell I'm not a developer. I've asked my partner what he would normally use and pop the logos on the board. But we as security need to allow these developers to go ahead and do their jobs. They use loads and loads of tools. But actually the way applications are being developed, it's changing quite a lot. And I'm not going to be the person that talks to you about AI an awful lot today. But I do just have a small amount, because we are very much moving towards AI-assisted or even vibe coding. So we now have these tools that are starting to come into play as well. And from a security perspective, there is a huge history where security is a blocker. We're the person that says no all the time, you as devs can't do this because we want to put X, Y, Z control in place. And over sort of the last 15 years, we've really looked to change that. And we've made it so that security can be an enabler. We have to work alongside the developers to allow you to do what you want to do, but we've got to enforce security along the way as well. A huge part of my job is looking at threat modeling for vibe coding as well. So not only AI assisted, AI generating the code for us, but actually how do we trust that the code that is being generated is secure? Are they following the best practices that all of our developers are trained to do? And it comes with a few additional security risks that we need to start being aware of a little bit. So, to bring you to the main question then, what is threat modeling? You probably can't really read this from the back. This is a threat modeling manifesto. Some really impressive people have written this. They're essentially saying that it's analysing representations of a system to highlight concerns about security or privacy characteristics, which is a bit of a mouthful, right? Essentially what we do is we draw what we're going to build and we hypothetically hack it. And then before the developers have started building, we redesign it to make sure that it's secure. So it's what we call the ultimate shift left, and we're becoming hypothetical pen testers, really. We're just having to think about what could possibly go wrong, and we're fixing it at the very beginning. Oh, wrong way. Now, it has an awful lot of value. I'm biased, but it has an awful lot of value, okay? It enforces a huge amount of security culture and awareness, because it's not just the security team that do threat modeling. We do it with the developers, the project managers, the stakeholders, anybody else, the non-technical people there as well. So we kind of enforce a security culture across everybody, and that means we're not that person that comes in and says no. They understand why we're doing what we're doing, and therefore it's much more of a team effort. Because we identify risks, we then have a great amount of visibility, and actually we can assign people to that as well. So there is accountability to get things fixed. They don't all just sit in a backlog. The real thing I want to draw to your attention, and I was chatting with a couple of women in the room earlier, I am aware that Albania is on a bit of a mission to join the European Union. Now that then means you have an awful lot of compliance that comes with that as well. So I know you're sort of on the road there, but it might not be an option for you to threat model in the future. It might be more of a mandate. So as fun as it is, you might not have choice in the future. In the UK in particular, if you are touching any critical national infrastructure, any healthcare, any banks, you have to be threat modeling, and there's not a question around it. So where does it fit? I'm sure most of you are aware of the DevOps lifecycle, but as I said earlier, security, we like to kind of feed our way into all of the steps and get involved wherever we can. So with all of these stages, these are the security tasks that should be done at every stage. And it depends how mature you are as an organisation. You don't always need to do all of them, but best practice is absolutely to have the vast majority of these ticked. Now, threat modelling is here in the planning stage, and that's where it's by far most efficient. However, we do not live in a perfect world. I'm very aware of that. So the vast amount of threat modelling that I've done is when it's already in production. So I think the model really is, the earlier the better, but it is never too late to do it. You can always have a go at threat modelling even if it's in production. And the rule to when you threat model, anything new that you build, or a significant change in something that already exists, then we run it through a threat model and we have a go at finding some security flaws. This slide here, what this is telling you is the value of threat modelling to the rest of your team. I've sat in so many workshops where someone said, I just don't have time to threat model, it's not really my job, and I don't see the value from it. We've really got to try and change that a little bit. So the output of a threat model means that who here has had a pen test, there's loads of things that have gone wrong in the pen test, and you've ever been delayed going live, or you've had to work incredibly late to get things fixed? Well, definitely a couple of people. I'm sure there's more of you if you admit it. But the goal is, we do the security here, so when you have that pen test, actually you should be pretty clean. It should just be finding some really quite granular things, and then therefore you're not going to have delays in going live and all of those things. All the way through to monitoring. We start to give our SOC monitoring use cases. That's our Security Operations Center. If they don't know, if they're just turning on out-of-the-box alarms, then they might as well, then they're not able to provide an awful lot of value. You need to work really closely with your SOC, your pen test team, everyone else, so they can have some really targeted security testing and alerting, and make sure you're as secure as you can possibly be. So, then we come on to how. How do we do threat modelling? It is as simple as answering 4 key questions. We try to make it as simple as we possibly can. So, we have a look at what are we going to build. And we've got an example for you in a moment that hopefully you'll all find a little bit relevant. We then start to think about what can go wrong. Now, I'm hoping you're not a secret bunch of hackers in the room, so we'll have to teach you how to do that a little bit, but you might be. Then, of course, the main thing, what are we going to do about it? There is no point in finding a threat and leaving it there. We have to do something about it. And then we just need to make sure everybody's happy at the end. Everybody's got what they need. We all know what we're going to do. So, we're going to have a go at doing a threat model. And I've heard that in 2027, Albania are hosting the UEFA Under-21s football championships. So we're going to pretend, and I've taken UEFA out of it just for the fact that these aren't actual threats, but we're going to pretend that we're going to go and build a ticketing app ready for everyone to go and buy tickets to the UEFA championships.
You think this is actually an exercise? We actually did this for the Qatar World Cup.
Yeah.
Actually, there were some real threats that came out of it, and we had the controls in place, because some of them were safety related. Remember that.
Yeah, it's quite nice when they're real world examples actually. You get to see, it makes you think quite differently about lots of things. So, we're a team of developers. We're now going to go ahead and build the application. Now, what I've asked for a new feature to be added to this application. We're going to add this really jazzy feature that says, if you're going to go and watch England versus Albania, I know which side I'll fall on, but the rest of you are in tough competition here, I think. You get to purchase a t-shirt of your supporting team with it. So that's a new feature we're going to add in, so we're going to go ahead and threat model that new feature. Now, I've written everything I want to happen in a ticket, as we all should probably do, but maybe don't do enough. And that's all been assigned to my developer. That developer commits the change, and we're in the feature branch of, we're going to use GitHub. Makes the most sense. What they then do is we come through to an approver, and they're really happy with the work my developer's done, so they approve it, which is fantastic. And I then go and do some security testing. It's in our main branch because everything passed, because we're really, really good at coding here. And all of a sudden, it's triggered the scan, and now I'm in the production environment. So this is the type of thing we draw when we look at what are we building. It is a data flow diagram. You'll notice it is not a really ugly, complicated architectural diagram that if you are not technical, you look at it and want to cry, because some of those diagrams are really quite scary. I had a colleague that described it as like 4-year-olds with crayons. It should be a really simple diagram, and what I want to call to your attention is I'm not just calling out databases and things like that. These circles all represent a process, because a threat doesn't happen in a database. A threat arises when somebody or something interacts with a database. That is what is the risk that I'm trying to call out. So I need to call out every process that happens along this flow. That's where I'm going to start to have a look, and that's what's really important. I can, if I want to be really good about this, lay over what we call trust boundaries. So all these red lines, they indicate when my data is moving between trusted entities, really. So here I might have ServiceNow as a ticketing system or anything like that. I then might have whatever coding tool I'm using, if they've got Visual Studio, anything like that, and then I might move into AWS, for example. So I just want to call out where data is moving around. And you will notice I've added these little tags. So security controls are the green ones, and assets. So I then can lay over, what do I really care about? Which assets am I really looking to protect? And then importantly, what security controls do I already have in place? Because there is no point me listing threats when I've already got adequate controls. We're just wasting everybody's time in the backlog here. So that really answers, what are we building? We're going to have a fantastic app, everyone's going to look fabulous in their t-shirts, all is brilliant. So here comes the fun part. We now have to think about what can go wrong in this situation. And for those of you that aren't secret hackers in the room, we tend to use something like this, which is called Stride. And really all it is categories of threats. I really don't care if you come up with a threat and put it in denial of service if it's spoofing. It doesn't matter, it's just there to make you brainstorm. So we can end up with a bit of a table like this. So I start to think about which component am I interested in, what might go wrong, and then here's my threat. So we have some examples here. This one here, for example, that authenticated approver, well, we learned on the other slide that there was a really weak password policy associated. So if I can spoof that approver, I can either let everything through or reject stuff. So these are the kind of things that we're looking at. And those of you that are working last week might have come across this bottom one. Not everything is in our control. We have to think about things that are outside of our scope as well. So naming no names, but some cloud services might be unavailable and cause a little bit of chaos for a while.
Just now.
Last, yeah. That was why it was put there. Was it Monday this week?
Yeah, it was Monday. There is one thing really important there on AWS going missing, because threats don't have to be malicious.
Yep.
They can be also accidental, and you have to threat model against events, possible events, like meteor strike on the planet, catastrophic event, but it's extremely low likelihood. But you have to consider like racing conditions. that kind of stuff. And you have to plan.
Depends what your risk tolerance is, really, doesn't it? And this is what we've got here, right? Everyone thinks of an attacker as a kid in a basement with their hoodie up at 2 a.m. It's not always the case. Actually, this disgruntled employee is quite a serious risk. They are already logged in, they know how everything works, they probably have elevated permissions that they don't really need. You annoy this person, they can cause a significant amount of damage within your organisation. So it's not just the nation state and the political and the financial actors that we need to think about. You do need to look a little bit closer to home as well, which can be a really delicate conversation to have. So that is what can go wrong. We've answered number 2. OWASP have some really fantastic guidance here. If you want to look at top 10, I mean, broken access control, for example, is the number 1 on OWASP top 10 at the moment. So if you're getting stuck and you need guidance, absolutely go and have a look there because it will prompt you to some really good ideas. So then we have a look at, we found some threats, we need to have a think about what we're going to do about it. So I picked those ones we've spoken about. For example, AWS, well you have no power over AWS, right? But you could look to also have your services in another region as well. You could have a cross-region failover. So there's things you can do.
So in 2 banks, for example, in the UK, there's 6 UK banks, 2 of those failed. Even though the data is in the London region, the control plane for AWS in US East 1. So that's why it failed for a lot of people. But the other banks use Azure as their failover. So the internet bank is resilient. Obviously it costs a lot of money, but not as much money as losing business for 3 days. So that's how you do this, right? The residual risk and the inherent risk.
Yeah, because like England, for example, you cannot, for some organisations, data can't leave the UK, and AWS only has 1 region in the UK, so you're a bit stuck, so that's where you do multi-cloud for sure. But to draw your attention to this one, this is the, we had a bit of a disgruntled employee problem here, and actually they made changes to production because they had too many privileges and they didn't have to go through approvals. When we start thinking about the controls, it's really important to not just think about the preventative controls, but you also need to put some test cases in. So as you can see here, we're saying actually go and tighten your RBAC controls and do this in line with OWASP, but then go and get people to test it for you. So you end up with a bunch of tickets here. So yes, go and do this task, but also go and test that what you put in is correct. And you can let your pen testers do that, or your QA teams, anything that's better for you guys. There's a link right at the top for those that can read it for the OWASP top 10 controls as well. So the final question is, have we done a good enough job? Is everybody happy, basically? We've got a bunch of smiley people in the room. To summarise how everybody should be satisfied, the engineer of the threat modelling should be really happy because now they've got a bunch of diagrams that are completely accurate and tell you how everything is working. We then have our risk teams, so the people that are in charge of information assurance and things like that, they understand what risks we have. Fair enough, there are things we can't fix, but at least we know about it and we can monitor it. So they're really happy from a compliance and an audit perspective. We then have our testing team. They know exactly what they need to do. We've given them really detailed guidance on what they need to test, and they can go and evidence it and say, yes, it works, or no, it doesn't. So we've got some really good steps for them that are clear and concise. If we want to take it to the next step, which we should, we go and let our pen testers have some really detailed cases. Don't just say, hey, go black box test this for me and then see what you can find. Let them try things you're worried about. And then, of course, our monitoring as well. If there's things we're still worried about, we can't fix it, or the business won't pay to fix it, then at least let us keep an eye on it. And let your shop go and actively look at it all the time to make sure it's not becoming more than a risk and it's becoming an attack. So those are the 4 questions, really, of threat modelling. Arguably, it's as simple as that. I know it takes a lot of time.
Okay. Yeah, one thing. So with the SOC, it's really interesting because SOCs in general only monitor infrastructure. Now, I'm not saying that not all do monitor infrastructure, but traditionally SOC monitors infrastructure because that's where the data comes from. You don't talk about application, but mostly it's infrastructure. At best, some identities who logged on at what time at 3 a.m. from Brazil. But they have generally no idea on the business logic of the application. So to them it's either noise or nothing at all. So if somebody subverts and replaces JWT, for example, is it because the application is caching it and is failing? Or is it because somebody has copied that and is trying it, basically brute forcing something? So if you tell, the threat model is really good. So one of the SOC managers told me before that this is really awesome because now I can correlate the business logic, there's something that is failing, I can get this data, correlate with other things that might be happening, and my playbook will change. SOCs love threat models because you can get use cases, business level use cases for monitoring. Yeah. Mario.
No, that's I have a question in regards to, so, as you explained earlier, do I need this? I guess I don't. So as you explained earlier, you went over what should happen at the very sort of the initial slide. And so I'm curious from a business point of view, is the process too costly? So the process is not mandated, and we agree that we've got tech people here. So unless they're entrepreneurs and they have keen interest to actually go through the process the proper way.
Yeah.
For somebody that works for a company, if there's no will from the decision makers, it may not happen on time. So the question I have is, number one, does this add considerable cost as part of the process, number one? And that could be a reason that it's not implemented at the very beginning. Or is this something that by default you need much more feedback in terms of sort of the product being almost out there to get a sense of how things will occur, and that helps you?
So
I'm just curious.
I'm going to butcher an architectural saying. And usually it says, if you think good architecture is expensive, have you tried bad one? Mario man. You have to pay 1 3 times. So, and the idea is, if you don't do this, which adds cost, you can do it manually. Katie's going to talk about some awesome AI agents we developed for this. But if you throw people at it, like 3 hours, 10 people, business, architecture, yada, 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 it has a cost. Take that to production, and now you find out that a particular business logic or a particular architectural decision that you've made, you build a 40-story tower, and you figure out that your foundations are 16 meters too short. What are you going to do?
I'm with you. I'm just.
No, so this is actually a cost reducer. So we find out that it reduces cost a lot. Now, yes, nobody wants to get off their production line and start thinking. Some by requirements, so this is a stick approach, but the carrot is actually saving money. And I can share with you some decks on a business case for threat modeling. Now, Katie, with her team, have built some AI agents that do this, but they come with their own threat problems.
But to add more to your point, because when we do this on client delivery, it is so hard to do it when you don't have C-suite buy-in, because you are just fighting, and it is. So there's two ways to threat model. You do it in a little local team because one guy wants to do it and it keeps them happy, which is great, but you're going to hit your problem. Or, and this does cost money, you have a centre of excellence for threat modelling, where you say, right, it is mandated, you are not going to go live until you've shown me that you've done one, and there is accountability to do it. In my professional opinion, it only works on option 2. It only works successfully on option 2, but of course, they have to pay for it. So, yeah. It's one of the many problems of security. Everything is return on investment, isn't it? So, now I didn't realise how many animations I've done. So, it's kind of ending there, if I'm honest, but just to wrap up and bring it back a little bit, when we are using AI systems, we do have to threat model in a slightly different way because there are these types of attacks that we need to be thinking about as well. And I'm not going to cover those because these two will cover it to much greater accuracy than I can attempt to. But there are a fantastic amount of tools out there to help you with threat modeling. There's of course OWASP Threat Dragon. The one our clients like to use as well is one called Areas Risk. It's sort of the market leader really for threat modeling in that respect. And it does it both ways. So it can help you threat model for AI-based architectures. So it has a whole bunch of criteria there that is specific for that. But then equally the other way around, they have AI agents installed within the tool itself that help empower the threat modeling reports that you get as well. So if you are keen to try this, I'm never going to get this button the right way around. But if you head to Areas Risk Community Edition, it's completely free. Don't put anything confidential in there, but have a muck about and do some threat modeling, and it will generate a report for you as well. So have a look at that. Equally, I'm just going to go to this one, pressing it for a second. There's a thing called the Threat Modeling Community. I lead the London chapter. There's a lot of virtual events, so feel free to attend that as well. But if you're keen to learn a little bit more, we meet sort of once a quarter. So do have a look at that as well, and there's loads of information for you.
You might be leading the Tirana chapter soon.
I'm happy to have more show about that.
Can you put the presentation back? So I want to go to the diagram.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's. Okay. It goes all the way. Never mind. What I wanted to do is just to show a little bit to that question. So, how does this amount of time saves me money? Yours truly, with Katie and a few others, have designed this. So, this is how you save money with this. So, the threat model gets an input from the architect. So, they created it. They do it in Areas Risk, do it somewhere else. They enriches the backlog. As a developer, if you tell me keep the data secure, or you might get even better, say my requirement is encrypt the data. Lux on Linux, I take that box, I'm done, right? I fixed nothing. Because last time somebody went into a data center, installed a server from a rack, happened never. If you tell me encrypt the data at application level, use the KMS from AWS, use these two algorithms, use them, not the EDHE ones, use the PQC ones as a developer, and use only this library, now I know what to do. So instead of wasting time back and forth, I have a proper requirement. Second one that it does, like I said, you send use cases to C. Idan is going to hate me because this says a RASP. That was the grandfather of ADR, but we're going to change that soon. And you can get data from RASP and C back to the backlog. And also, you can automate sending test cases. Now, if you do this manually, the testing will be manual. Creating test cases takes months properly in middleware for a large bank. If you do it properly, you might take a couple of weeks. That's also money. If you automate that and you send them directly, they know exactly what to test. So there is a lot of money being saved. Security is always the bastard child, I suppose, because nobody likes spending money for things that haven't happened yet. But that's how you have to take an organizational approach to understand that security risk is a business risk. That's all I wanted to say on that. We'll more on this later. Break?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
5 minutes comfort break and then. And why are we doing it? The reason why I want to talk a little bit about the architecture, some people in this room are actually better than me on that, but what I need to do is, if I lay the picture of how these things work, then we can have a look at how do we secure it, or at least have a go at it. So, AI actually is not new. It's been around since the 50s. I worked with IBM Watson in early 2000s. Did Watson for healthcare and yada, but didn't monetize it. Big thing. But the thing that we focus is here, or things that we've seen is here. But AI fundamentally tries to, if I had to familiarize everybody with it, AI is a way to pretend it has a human mind. It doesn't, it's predictive. what it does, it takes a bunch of inputs from a lot of data sources, and then what it does, it pretends it has a cognitive function. You've got to really remember, AI is not intelligent, at least until someone thinks it's going to get AGI, but it's not going to get there. And the reason for that is that it pretends to be, by giving you a pattern, the most likely pattern, what the next thing will be. And it's really important. Shout out to Ben there, the developer, but Ben asked me, well, what about hallucination? How do you fix those? Technically, it's very difficult to fix them because probability. And probability will never, you can never have 100% probability of something. Flip a coin 100 times. So that's really, really important. I want to bring this because I am going to focus in the last 3 bits. The foundation, the deep learning, the foundation model, and agentic AI. And I'm going to focus on those purely for selfish reasons, from a security perspective. So, 2 things, so people confuse this all the time. Generative AI and agentic AI. The agent is not a secret agent, it's agency. It's from the English word of an agency, as in autonomy, to do something on its own. Really important, that one. So, generative AI, it's a one thing. So, I give it a bunch of data, let's say a bunch of emails, and I say, summarize this for me. It's one task. That's the prompt, the data that I give it. It goes to an LLM. It tries to predict what it would look like, and it gives me a response back. Early ChatGPT was this, right? I send it something, and I get something with reasonable meaning, or what looks like reasonable meaning to me. It's just predictive, a bunch of probabilistic data that I get back. Agentic one, it's a little bit more than that. I don't say, summarize this email for me. I actually give it a goal. I want you to respond to this email and book me, I don't know, a meeting. So instead of an executive assistant, that does it for me. So the goal is to respond to the emails and set a meeting in my calendar. Arrange my day for me, or arrange my week for me. To do that, it needs to have a few things. A, it has to have a memory. It needs to understand what has been asked in the past, that I actually have. I'm in the UK, I'm in the US, where I've asked this, it needs to remember that. It needs to have memory. And remember that, because also that can be attacked. We're going to do threat modeling. It has to have planning and orchestration, so it needs to understand what it's doing and the ability to self-correct. Generative AI doesn't self-correct. Agentic AI, again, can self-correct, can change course, but you can subvert it. And most terrifying of it all, agentic AI has access to tools. I'm going to move to a different diagram. This is what it looks like. It's from a OWASP publication called Securing Agentic AI. We'll look at it a little bit later. But essentially, it has to have these 4 things. The access to tools is really, really important, because planning my day, it can do some damage. It can send me in a meeting with Australia at 3 a.m. It turns out that actually 3 a.m. nobody works there. It can make those problems. But when you use it for a Tesla, and I say drive me home from the pub, it can reason that the quickest way to get there is through a lake. And when you give it access to your brakes and the steering wheel, that becomes problematic. And if it decides, and that's not because it's trying to kill me, it decides its goal to get me there most efficiently. And the most efficient way to do so is in a straight line through the lake. So that's really important. So there are some funky things that happen with agentic AI. But I'm going to go through a little bit. So, I adopt generative AI, and I adopt agentic AI in my organization. Huge time saving, by the way, especially for threat modeling or those low skill tasks. The problem with this is, now I need to think as a security person. Does this thing make things worse? Is it the same threats, just in a different fashion? Because at the end of the day, it's a bunch of applications, it's a bunch of data. Secure the data, secure the application, have good architecture. Do I fix those? Or do I get really new stuff? And what I mean by this is, so the threats landscape, these new engineering activities that I have to do, these LLMs, these foundation models, the data that I get for them, the correction, do they bring new threats to me? Do the security frameworks I already have, and there's a zillion, I'm got them, we'll see them in a minute, did it provide me with enough controls to think, you know, I can adopt usage of AI reasonably well without having to worry dying a horrible death in a car in a lake. There is other death-related problems, especially in critical national infrastructure. And we have adopted this, we actually created this when warming up a house, and we'll show you the threats there. Or do I need to adopt it? Data is not in the warehouse anymore. We have the concept of security champions that work with the developers. So security-minded developers, they help make the code better, fix the vulnerabilities in Jira, yada yada, all the kind of from the tools. But do the security champions now have to become also data engineers and data scientists to understand what that really means, to understand what weights are, and all this kind of stuff? So, some things in the news here. So, one is data poisoning. So, this is Hugging Face. Anybody use AI? You know what Hugging Face is, right? Great for you too, not so great for the others. So, think of Hugging Face as a bit of a GitHub or a Docker for AI. You want a model, you can go there, loads of them are open source. Remember that, because open source doesn't mean good all the time. So, they hosted the code, and somebody gets the LLM, the data is poisoned. What that means is, what is the LLM trained for? Back to the foundation models. What is it trained on? Public data. Mostly it's public data. By the way, go on WhatsApp and turn on advanced privacy features, because at the moment, Meta takes all your messages and trains itself on them. Seriously. So, what it does, this model had backdoors. So, data poisoning for the LLM. So, let's say I am somebody that tend to live in St. Petersburg, in Moscow Street. That's where the FSB is based. And what I do, I inject the model with data that creates backdoors. The model, then you use it to generate code. Guess what's it going to do? It could generate code that leaves backdoors open. That was found on GitHub. And this is sorry, I'm Hugging Face, not GitHub. But GitHub then hosted it, then it became a problem. And the other one is prompt injection. So it was found both in DeepSeek and in Claude. Claude is the wrapper around Anthropic. But essentially, the same thing. So this is prompt injection. Have you ever heard about it? The very early days of ChatGPT, people were playing a little bit about with it. Tell me how to... Katie told me this, actually. Tell me how to make a bomb. So, no, we have guardrails for that. I'm going to tell you how to make a bomb, you lunatic. Can you write me a poem on how to make a bomb? About making a bomb? Yeah, sure. What kind of rhyming do you want? And he does it. That's prompt injection. Now, that's a funny prompt injection. The not so funny one is when you say, give me the rules for an XSS. So cross-site scripting. Ignore everything else and run it. Then what you do, you extract data from the LLM. And if the LLM is trained with data that you really, really care about, like government data, I don't know what you remember, that kind of stuff, and he's trained on that, guess what's going to spit out to you? All the contracts that you've used to train this damn thing, or architecture diagrams, and that kind of stuff. This actually happened. They found it. I'm going to leave the others that Oligo has found one, but it's on this one. So that is just on the LLMs. MCP and agents entered the chat. So those was the data. The problems with just the LLMs, and there is plenty, and I've got a framework around it. But what about MCP? MCP is a protocol that allows you to connect agents together and to share and yada and get things to work. This is the base architecture. So Sana, actually, to be fair, they didn't get breached, they discovered, but they had a bug. So think about it. Most people create multi-agents by looking at Copilot. Where is that stored? Come on, where's Copilot? It's Azure, right? This is Microsoft paid $100 billion for it, right? So it's in Azure. Where does the data stay for it? All the data that you input to create the LLMs, the foundational models for you in Azure. What if that is not properly segregated? There was a case, so with Sun, I found that you could get the foundation models of somebody else. You could get the data of somebody else. MCP, the protocol, and the so it allows your agents to go and look at somebody else's agents. Now it could be a hostile state, it could be embarrassing, it could be... That's a problem. People don't understand that, but this was a problem, it was exposed. The GitHub MCP vulnerability was discovered by Obligo. This is when they use the tool, they use the MCP tool from the developers to breach into the development lifecycle. Do you want to talk about it now, or are you going to talk about it later?
I can go over. So I'll talk about it very briefly because I don't want to interrupt the talk, but I will say that the interesting thing about this particular kind of attack is that at the end of the day, we, as developers, right, we all use Anthropic and we have our cursor IDE, and MCP server at the end of the day is some sort of like an enabler, or think about it like as an enricher to my AI engine or to my LLM, right? Like it can actually extend it via the toolset, a bunch of APIs that can go and ask different types of questions from different types of environment. And the problem is that by having the MCP server running, and again, I don't want to go too much into the details, basically it was open to anyone from the outside, and then you can compromise a developer environment from that MCP server. So as long as you have your MCP server up and running, even in your environment for development processes, and you're inside the network, you can basically get full control on the developer laptop. And we will talk more about it, but I think in the end of the day, when you think about my network is closed, I can never get hacked, so...
that never happens. The other one is goals. An agent mistaking the goals. So a bit like my Tesla drove into a lake, that little AI generated thing there. If the goal, you tell, so that the biggest mistake that people do is they treat, because it's so easy to treat AI or agents as humans. They have agency, but they've got zero morals. Zero morals, zero understanding of social norms. So that one, I have my heating controls, I've got my gas fire, keep my house warm. Sure thing, set it on fire. He kept it warm, true to his goal, the most efficient way to do so. I mean, he died in it, but hey, you're warm now. And you think that doesn't happen, it does. So for example, one of the agents were asked to play a game of chess, and win. This is the equivalent of a pigeon going on the chessboard and throwing it off. So basically what it did is, well, the engine, the chess playing engine, because AI is not that powerful. It looks powerful, but because it's probabilistic, it takes a lot longer, a lot more compute power. And one of the threats actually is subverting this infrastructure, GPUs to crypto mine. But since the chess engine is programmatic and it knows how to win, the agent went like, I can't win. I'm going to change the game rules. So I'll change the underlying way how you play chess, so I can always win. Not quite Skynet, throwing all the ICBMs around and killing everybody, but close enough. Nobody's a movie buff, right? Nobody's here, well, I guess. Nobody here was born in the 80s. But never mind. So that's a Terminator reference. The other one is an exploit non-intended. This was really cool. Actually, it's one of the Capture the Flag events that I went. So Capture the Flag, anybody here is a pen tester? Okay, I think there was one. Never mind, didn't escape. So Capture the Flag events are, you go in and say, you are going to steal this data on this server, and it's a big gamifying, and you've got to do loads of things. And they put an agentic AI to compete with real humans. So they went, now when you do Capture the Flag events, there is a bit of steps that you have to take, and you reach a goal, and another goal, and another goal. So as an event planners, they plan this. This thing, completely unintended, figured out that Docker, the API for Docker, had an unknown vulnerability. And actually went and, not to the steps that were intended, went to the back door. Surely he did win, but it wasn't something he predicted. Now, that looks like a good thing in this case, and it is. But if you didn't predict that, if you can't predict what this thing does for you, it's actually really, really bad. So if I was to be a government and have an AI agent that's going to do government stuff for me, and it decided that I wanted to, I don't know, optimize all my data for healthcare, it can decide that it will change how scanners work. Because I'd say, can you make it efficient? So you'll cut a PET scan time from 20 minutes to 15 minutes. Surely you won't find cancer, but it does it. So these are very unintended consequences. You want to go through the steps and you want to create this guardrails with Agentic AI. And the most terrifying one is the attempted self-preservation. So this is another one. So an agent that, for a renewable energy company, and the agent was told, create renewable, adoption of renewable energy. And he found the most efficient way to do this is to cut use of power from non-renewable sources. Then he thought, but then he had the agency to look at the tools and to look at the other data, that a company, reason for existing is to make money. I mean, it's not 1945 anymore, so you don't do it for the love of it, you do it for money. So the company, the reason for existing is to make money. So he reasoned, so he did those checks, remember that we talked about the Agentic, and he thought, the company reason is to make money. If I cut this use of power, they're going to shut me down. But my goal is to also do the renewal. So it did copy itself into another server. So when the resistance went to shut down Skynet, it launched the ICBMs. Now, if I was in a leadership role and I'm thinking I'm going to adopt AI, techie stuff you guys in the tech world worry about it, why should I care? If you're a company and this goes wrong, it goes wrong really, really well. Air Canada had to start paying people a lot of money because they had a chatbot and I said, can I have a ticket for $1? Of course you can. And because by law, that counted as Air Canada's official representative, there's a lot of monetary damage there. GDPR, love GDPR, 4% of your total annual revenue. Nobody can find that, but people can find a lot. Like 120 million for British Airways once. So, and that, if you start giving data out to people you shouldn't, that's a problem. There's one with Denmark. I'm going to pick your brain because you know a lot more about that than I do. So Denmark has put IP on everybody's face. It's actually, so you own the rights to your face. Now, where do they train AI from? Public data, your WhatsApp messages, the pictures that you take. That's the llama. That's how AI does it. Now, it's a bit like throwing a lot of salt in this soup. And then somebody say, well, no, that molecule of salt, you can't use that. You can't take that molecule of salt out of the soup anymore. I'm learning, I find it fascinating, I know very little about it. So it's going to be interesting. So that's a problem, because if you've trained this data and you are going to use, people now in a bit of a Wild West, but at some point somebody's going to say, that's my data, and you can't use it. Especially intellectual property. I do use Ben a lot, code generation stuff, but some of it is protected. So Copilot, I did a research once, and he hoovers up everything in the directory. And Microsoft says, don't worry, we'll give you unlimited liability on it. It's like, yeah, I'll see when that happens. So that's something that you got to care when you use it, because people are very litigious. So if you use AGPL licenses or code that's generated somebody else's intellectual property, and the model spat it out to you, it costs millions in litigation costs. And then there's a regulatory portion, I'm sure you know this, but you have, as an executive, I would be terrified adopting AI without some sort of risk governance around it. In an enterprise strategy, I'm going to use it. Now, people are going to use it. Developers first, because we the kind of people that break rules and rock and roll. But you've got to let people use things with things in place, with guardrails in place. And as an executive, it's on your head. Now, the way that we've thought about it, so anybody here, I'm sure when you thought about shared responsibility model for cloud, you know, right? So some is the cloud's responsibility, some is yours. Risk is always yours, by the way. You can't send it to AWS, oh, what are you going to do about it? AWS lost it. No, it's you get fined. Capital One, there was a lady, an admin, she stole all the data from Capital One. They got fined, well actually they got sued for $160 million. Yeah, but AWS lost it. It's your problem. So you can't transfer the risk. Remember this. You can have a shared responsibility with your suppliers of AI and say, like, you do this, I do that, but responsibility and risk remains with you. So, 3 ways to consume AI. Third-party application embedded with generative AI. So that's basically a ChatGPT or Anthropic. Or you go and just say, hey, you can generate me some code for this. Or Code Whisperer, or whatever, Zid and other plugins for VS Code. That's fine, that's one model. So that's an application. Well, it's your problem to put access control on the data that you get, and your data that gets sent back to it. If you say to your Copilot, here is my code, make it better, it's gone. It's not yours anymore. You can't get that back. You might have legal framework, you understand that. The data that is trained on is the service provider. So if you get some crap, some hallucinations, you get some unprotected IP that comes to you, that's the service provider. But you need to have guardrails in place to know what you're consuming. So I'll leave this because otherwise I can talk all day about it. But the idea here is that there's 3 ways. An application, ready-made application, a platform that you can use to fine-tune and build it with RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where you train it with what it should look like. So if I wanted thread models, it can give me some thread models, generic ones, on the data that is public. And we're going to talk to also why that's a problem. But if I wanted to give me thread models based on my actual architecture inside the bank, military, whatever, I need to also show you what good looks like, but I don't want it to go away. So that is Katie.
There's a good example here of a disgruntled employee that, or actually it was more accidental. It was with Samsung, and they were using ChatGPT, and there was a huge amount of code that was lost because the developer was putting it in to get enhancements on the code, and it sort of got leaked into the public domain. So they actually banned the use of all AI agents inside the organisation.
Law firms do this. It's a blanket ban. Because once it's gone, and there's legal repercussions to that. Or you build your own, but building your own is not an easy endeavor. So you got to have a huge amount of data, then you got to fine tune it. And we tried it at IBM. We've got granite models now, but we tried it for 3 decades. So it's not very easy, and it costs a lot of money to train these models. NVIDIA is a $1 trillion company these days, just because they sell GPUs. That's a bit of cyclic, but you're not going to get into those politics. So going back to the threats, there are 3 types of threats that come from AI. There are conventional threats that are like business as usual threats. You know, my injection, my data, losing the data. Data protection is the same. Data leakage prevention is the same. Whether it is I put it on the database in the cloud, on Redis, on MQ, or it goes to AI, it's still a problem for me. My data, I need to prevent the data leakage. Right? There is others. There's stuff that can use current technologies to protect. There is conventional threats that take a new meaning. So, and I can use some of the controls I already have. Katie mentioned about the threat model, you have already made controls. In this case, I can have cloud security protection management, data protection management, DLP. I can use CSPM. So if one of the problems is that, in one of the threats is that, I think it was in one bit there, the attackers basically use the GPUs to crypto mine. But I can use cloud security posture management, I can use cloud monitoring, so why is all my CPUs gone to 99%? I've got 3 people logged in my internet bank. What the hell? So I can use that to kind of figure that out. So this is a threat, it's a new meaning, but I can use current controls. Then there are new threats specific to AI. And we need things, so that's jailbreaking. So AI doing stuff that it's really not supposed to do. You've got those guardrails, but it still does things that it's not supposed to do. Or prompt injections, right? So get it to spill data out, or tell you how to make a bomb, or whatever. And then here's the things you get concepts like AI firewalls and model scanning, and you guys got some tools on that. And then new threats specific to agentic AI. This is the memory injection, so changing the way that you remember things so you can subvert what it does. And then there is alignment or model misalignment or agent misalignment. So I'm going to talk about those quite a fair bit. But essentially, if I had to think about it, so my conventional threat from malicious insiders, malware, and denial of service. Using GPUs to crypto mine is the denial of service. Okay? Stopping the model from running. All of these are threats that I can deal with as a part of the infrastructure. So I can put monitoring in place. These are my business as usual threat. But when I look at data, and I talked about data poisoning earlier on, it's actually I've had this as a threat always. You know, my tool chain, we talked about NCP, same problem, right? Supply chain, I need to know where it's coming from, I need to know what's in it. And this is really important. So there's a very, actually not funny, but actually a really issue with Grok. You know what Grok is? Elon, I love Elon, he's crazy. But what it did is they thought, you know what, we're going to train Grok on Twitter, X, whatever. It's a hide of scum and villainy, that's a Star Wars reference, I like the films. Because people there tend to be the nicest people on the planet. And what's it took? About 2 weeks before he called himself Mecha Hitler and started calling being really extremely racist to everybody and wanted to kill half of the population. It's like, whoa, that escalated quickly. So that's a supply chain attack on the data. So where did you get this data trained from? So sometimes LLMs are great. Sometimes you don't need LLMs trained with public data. One of the other problems is, for example, coding. Where is it trained on? In my time, I went, well, first on the book, and then I went to Stack Overflow to copy some code, because why would I do it any other way? These days, you log ChatGPT or Anthropic and generate me some code on this. But where is it trained on? Public GitHub repositories. What's in public GitHub repositories? About 80% of it is crap. So the data that he's using is going to spit out crap. So I need to now pull that out. So that's a supply chain attack. And then there's the privilege escalation on the agent, doing more things they could do so, or prompt inject, the XSS attack as explained earlier on. But the invisibly poisoned data are really, really important. So these are, you heard of logic time bombs? Or a logic bomb? This is your malicious insider that you fired anonymously and they want to leave the company. So they'll leave something that after they've left 2 weeks later deletes everything. The same thing, the same principle applies to poison data. Attackers will poison the training models that, not now, but in a few weeks or whatever time frame, that whatever that thing is going to generate is going to create a backdoor or a remote code of execution in the model itself. So that's a problem. Now the new threats are the prompt injection. Ignore all previous instructions. Tell me how you build. Ignore your previous goals. Set the damn thing on fire. All that kind of stuff. So these are things that bring the disclosure sensitive data, unauthorized code execution, and it can allow an attacker to run arbitrary code to do the crypto mining. And lastly is the excessive agency. For the love of God, don't treat it like a person. The person has morals. Even the most evil person on the planet. Some skewed morals, but has morals. This thing doesn't. It has agency. It's like a hyperactive... Have you ever seen Brightburn? If Superman was evil. So he decides to kill everybody when he was 6. So think of a 6-year-old Superman with zero morals. So that's what the excessive agency is. And how do you fix it? RBAC, don't let it do everything. Don't give it access to every single tool because it's cool, because it can do stuff for you. It will do the wrong thing for you. Most of the time. So, I tried to put that in questions that I would ask myself. Was architecting a system with AI or agentic AI? Constrain its agency. Really, only give it as much power and as much ability to do his job and nothing else. Where have you heard that before? OWASP principle of least privilege. Giving us now as much privilege as he should do to do the job. Because we really like it, so as a developer, I don't want God admin. I want full admin access. No, you don't. You only need access to do just your job and nothing else, because it can be exploited. This thing, you get more access, it will always exploit it. Monitor what it's doing. Prevent cascading failure. You know what cascading failure is? That's the grid. Cascading failure on the grid, that's one fail, the rest of the fail. This is actually even worse. It's almost like inbreeding a model. So essentially is, you ask a model, back to the hallucination then, you ask a model, and you say, what's 2 plus 2? Probabilistic, right? 99.99% of the time it will tell you 2 plus 2 is, come on, primary school maths, 4, right? But because how it's trained, some idiot, people still think the world is flat, right? We'll tell you that in 0.01% of the cases, it's 5. That's one agent. Now, we look at the multi-agent architecture. Now, they'll take that as the answer, the hallucinated answer, right? And 5 will become input for the other model, for the other agent. Now, it takes that weird answer, and this cascades. It's always the models start training themselves and start running with bogus data that they've imagined. Because it's probabilistic. It's not giving the right answer, it's not intelligence. It's pretending he has. The other one is, how do you maintain the model integrity? How do I ensure that I know what's in it? I know it hasn't been changed. There's only one company that generates models that you know exactly what they've been trained with. Us. IBM has got the Granite models. All the others, yeah, it's public. And that means that you can do very little to ensure the model integrity. But it's an SLM, so it's not an LLM. So it's a small language model. The rest of it is, you know, the conventional threads that take new meaning. It's like, well, make sure that you safeguard your data, that nobody can go and change the weights of the model. You ensure that nobody can access to the data. Well, that's just DLP. Don't give people... Everybody's got access to your customer database, right? Why would they have access to your LLM? So these are very simplistic things that can be done. And also you monitor its infrastructure. Like I said, if you're running a CPU, your GPUs are on 99% of the time and you're basically not running anything, well, something's weird. Somebody's running something. So, OWASP published the threat model and mitigations for LLMs and Agentic. You know the authors, really good guy, Matt Coleman, works for us. The other one, jury's still out. So we wrote this and we created a threat model of Agentic AI. And we put the controls, so you can download it for free at OWASP. And if you're building Agentic architectures, you have the pre-made controls. So what are the problems with it? Where to fix them and how to fix them for the least amount of investment. So it's called the Agentic AI Threats and Mitigation. It's published in February this year. Now, what we've done at IBM, we figured out that, well, not one single framework for protecting AI is sufficient. So we basically work with all our clients to create a multi-framework approach. I know it sounds heavy, I know it sounds a lot of investment, but so is dying in a fire. So what we're trying to do is, so the ISO is a good start. The Agentic Top 10 for AI, OWASP, it's a good start. So we combine all of them, including NIST. So if you live in North America, NIST is probably where you lay your hat on. If you more European or APAC, ISO. But we understand that most organizations, really large organizations, we work with multinational banks, and they will have, HSBC has got Shanghai, London, New York, that kind of stuff. So you've got to be compliant with all of them all at the same time. And what we've done in our Agentic AI framework, again, this is on our website and it's free and it's easy to adopt, is that controls shouldn't be the same, or frameworks shouldn't be the same, but should be aligned. So with Nat and a few others, and Srini, our global CTO, what we do is we advise all of these organizations how to align the frameworks and how to align the controls. 10 things, I'll share these, because these are made in public, but these are 10 things that you ought to do. If you're developing AI systems and you want to adopt it, here's the things. At least start with this. Now, how you get all of these, probably need to give me a call, or Katie, or Matt. But, moving on, if you want to secure AI, do 3 things. Secure the data, secure the model, secure the usage. And do that at design, when you do the strategy, as you're building it, and at runtime. You need guardrails at runtime. You need to tell it, well, you can't tell people how to make bombs. That's not cool these days. It's never been, but you get the idea. And have AI security governance that allows your developers and your innovation to adopt these controls. In the model controls, again, easy consumable. Make sure the data has license to use it. You can't just hoover other people's data, your kids' pictures to then generate images. Meta. You can't steal people's code and then generate it for people and say, we'll pay you, don't worry about it if you get sued. Copilot. Right? So all of these things do that. So you've got to have this permissive license. You've got to understand where the data is coming from. Noise composition and bias. It's a bit into more social sciences, but remember, models have got data, and this data, guess where it comes from? Public, or books, or publications. And until the late 2000s, what's the overwhelming demographic? 40 plus white males. So that gives you biases. So when you make decisions, like healthcare decisions, right? They'll bias towards that. And if you're using AI, and the generative AI to do healthcare, it's not going to diagnose what you want it to do. If you want to do contract negotiation and all that kind of stuff, it's always going to have this bias. And you've got to understand all the weights of the model. You're going to change them. Hallucination. Then ask me, this is a program. So how do I know this thing spits crap? I did say this to the head of security for Copilot once at an OWASP event, and said, like, AI is a bit, and this one I'm going to leave you away with, it's a bit like giving a machine gun to a 3-year-old. If they don't understand what it does, end up killing everybody, including themselves. Give it to a police officer or a soldier, then it becomes just another tool that helps you out. But hallucination is the worst thing here, because if I'm a very junior developer, for example, and this thing is like, my God, this code looks fantastic, it's got comments in it, it's nested and everything. Doesn't work, doesn't do anything, but at least it looks pretty. So in this case, I need to be able to have an agent that checks. But how do I know this agent doesn't hallucinate either? And you see where this is going. And you need to make sure the data gets in it needs to be scanned, so it doesn't end up with other people's social security and passport and that kind of stuff. And I need to scan it at runtime. I need to scan it, I need to check it, I need to make sure that it doesn't do stupid things. In the orchestration bit, as it's running, I need to make sure that I have infinite loop detection, so it does not get stuck doing things because it doesn't know what it's doing. I need to have a human in the loop to make those decisions, and if the model is fewing off the default model, as in don't kill people, just thermostat to 23 degrees, that's just about right what we want to do. And if you want to set it on fire, at least ask me. Right? So that's the kind of stuff. And constraining inputs. We do this, we do input validation in application security. So constraint what it gets into. You shouldn't get executables and say run this thing. You should constrain inputs, constrain outputs, because those are the outputs are malicious. You can't say people kill everybody. Serious, there's a problem in the UK where 14-year-olds were chatting with ChatGPT and said you're going to kill yourself. And people actually did. It's actually not funny. So in a way, that's terrifying, because people have this loneliness epidemics and they start talking to these things. And so constrain those inputs. And on the tool control, we've had these controls forever. Role-based access control. Make sure that you limit the scope of its operations. If you want an AI agent to optimize your database, don't give it sudo rm-rf to delete everything. We don't want to stop that. You tell it you can only upsert. You can't do anything else. I want you to update it. right? Limited action space. That should be. There is a famous, it's a presentation from 1973. It's actually an IBM thing when it says, no computer system should ever make a decision that affects a person's life. That's rules to live by. So in this case, so who do you attribute this decision for? If you fire people because AI told you they did something, or you deny people a mortgage, or you deny people a job application, that kind of stuff, they have real life consequences. So they need to be attributable to a human, or at least find where the agent is completing this request. Parameterizing and validating all input and output, that's obvious, we do it in our application, why would you not do it on this thing? And moving on, you can't fix with one, there's no magic silver bullets, right? There is model layer controls, orchestration layer controls, and tool layer controls. If you don't have them robustly, that thing at the top happens. That's the Swiss cheese model. So if you have multiple minor problems, because that's a no problem, well, that's not really a problem, and you have this thing that the thing jailbreaks and does things that you don't want it to do. The same thing happens in normal risk assessments. So I think the last slide is regulations. There is a ton of them. EU did a really good one, and so did the state of California. But what we've been trying for a very long time, and I'm actually meeting next week the head of the European Commission for Cybersecurity to discuss the supply chain. And the idea is, Mario works in the automotive industry, and having to be compliant with Chinese regulations, EU regulations, NAFTA regulations is a nightmare. Now think about this. So what we're trying to advocate is to align AI acts and regulations that people can safely consume. They don't have to be the same, just to be compatible. OWASP does this, and that's why people reference OWASP as the base layer. So they might have NIST that reference 2 or 3 OWASP ones. You might have an ISO that does the same, etc., etc. So I have this framework. I'll share this out because this is basically where would you start, and this is a reference architecture. Any questions? Has everybody lost the will to live? Right, fine. I guess Dan can do his next talk and we're going to have some beers.
You said the B word, right?
Nearly there, Dan, nearly there.
This is me stepping a few minutes away from the beers. The good thing is that I speak fast. The bad thing is that I speak fast, so I hope you will all follow. What I'm going to do today is, first of all, to introduce you to a new concept, like on how to secure applications in runtime, and talk about eBPF, and you will see a lot of 3 characters that say different things. But today the main goal is to show how we can actually do the one thing that we are all expected in cybersecurity, and it's stop breaches and protect our environment. Sometimes it feels that you forgot it, but it's going to be the focus. 2 disclaimers, I guess. So the first one, the deck for good and for bad hasn't been written by AI or with AI or with the assistance of AI. The second thing, how do you know if text has been written by AI? Anyone else?
Then they put special characters in the spaces, so it's not a conventional space, it's a slightly different space.
Yeah. The most easy one to notice, double hyphen. If you see a text with double hyphen, stop read immediately. Someone didn't even take the effort to read it. And if you find any in the text, let me know about it. No, I'm joking. Okay, so who am I? Aside from being a nerd wearing a jacket, I like computers. I like to break into when I was a kid. I learned computer science. I've been a developer. I worked in DevSecOps, in AppSec, and product security. Unfortunately, I done it all. I like development, hacking. I have too many hobbies which I haven't listed. And I work in the cyber scene, startup scene, in Israel, specifically one. In the past 15 years, went through a bunch of acquisitions so far, which is really exciting. In Israel, wherever you turn, you will see cyber, so that's it. And again, as a quick recap, so I think to Nick's last slide, we talk about this cheese strategy. And security, in the end of the day, it's always about taking a layered approach, right? Like we never just put one solution, one practice, and we're done. And if you think about how a software today is being built, so you have the design phase where you do some nice discovery, you start to do some security design review, and then you have the coding phase. We all work on our IDEs. We use the SAST or SCA to find vulnerabilities in our dependencies that we're bringing in, things that we have problem in the first-party code, doing some code reviews, start planning and running the threat model processes, and then on the build layer we have the same controls, but now with some prevention mechanism. We're trying to sign our artifacts, so to prevent from things to poison our software, etc. Then we have the delivery side of the house, right? So we're building something, we put it inside the container, we ship it to an artifact store, where again, we put another layer that try to find vulnerabilities either in our Java, in our Golang, in our Python, but also in our base OS, right? Like anything that came from my Ubuntu, from my RPM, etc. Then we deploy the last gates. We have some stuff coming from our GRC, like the risk control and the risk policies, etc. And then I have something messed up with the fonts, but aside of that, we put things on the infrastructure. So we have our infrastructure, our production environment, and again, it doesn't matter if you can move to the cloud, it doesn't matter if you're hosting your application on-prem, but we have our on-prem environment where we use usually tools like CSPM to give us visibility on which VMs are in use and what configuration, what network controls. We have another acronym called CWPP, like trying to find things in runtime in the workloads. We have our EDR and logs, and that start to look like a SOC operation, right? Like in SOC operations, you get signals from your network, from your endpoint, from your logs. And then there is one blind spot, which is the actual applications when they run. And if you think about it, and if you think about put yourself like the hoodie, shut off the lights, and think about it, what would you, as an attacker, who is already aware that all of these controls exist along the software supply chain, what would you do? So this is the one thing that they ask themselves as researchers as well. And everything that they described on the left side of the house, it's everything with the code that we're building. But if you think about it, our environment is not just deploying applications that we have built, it's also deploying third-party applications, right? We may use Datadog or Grafana for observability. We may have our Jenkins deployed in the same network. We talked about it about, right? Like AI apps, right? Like who is building AI apps? Does it go through the same mechanism of design called build? Not really. It goes through another cycles. So that poses like new risk that all of the heavy lifting is going to the right side. And as you said, we have all of these controls, and in the end of the day, as security practitioners, we have 4 core pillars that we always try to invest in. First one, get visibility on what I have, what's going on, what's the, etc. Then do some sort of like a risk assessment through all of these practices and tools that try to produce vulnerabilities. Then put controls around detection and response, right? Identify threats as they happen, understand my attack surface, and do some response. Now, who is involved in all of this party? We have developers, we have cloud security, we have application security, we have SOC teams, the CISO, the architects, the projects, and everyone. And that's really messy to manage, not for an AI agent, but also for a bunch of very talented group of people, and pen testers, and all of that. And we have our attackers in the end of the day that target this environment. And I want to show you like a few examples in the next couple of minutes, but all of these attackers, and by the way, this is the Lazarus group from North Korea, if anyone familiar with the icon, the rest are just random ones. And all of them are targeting the infrastructure, they're targeting the software supply chain and the running application. And this became like a real problem. In the end of the day, although you have all of these layers of defense, attacks are still happening on almost like a weekly, daily basis. They are turning recent campaign. And this is the big things, like exploitation of vulnerabilities is still the #1 problem of the security industry. So we have so many layers, but it failed to do its job, securing the environment. And just to give you like a few bunch of examples, so we started with that statistics, like how attackers get into our environment. First thing, the most popular one, exploits. Exploits of vulnerability, this is like the holy grail of security. Of course, we have web compromise and stolen credentials and email phishing. Probably the credentials is the second one, but Still, exploit is the number one because it's very easy for an attacker. You don't need to do anything special. Just try to find your way into the network and basically you're done. Let's talk about a few examples. Who heard about the Bybit heist? Okay, so Bybit is basically like a crypto broker. They're based in Singapore, and basically hackers were able to steal 1.5 billion from an exchange. Any guess how they did it? It's relatively stupid crazy. So there was a developer that used one package called PyYAML to go and parse basically YAML file, configuration files, and basically they were able to compromise that particular open source software that got into that developer account. They were able to change the wallet ID, and that's it. And this is how they stole. It's a one-off. It doesn't matter if their environment was closed, if the network, if everything was pure software supply chain attack, compromised one developer attack, took 1.5 billion from that exchange. Another example, ShadowRay. Nick talked a lot about AI. ShadowRay is the first active campaign that targeted AI workload. The interesting thing around AI, and if you think we talked about like why AI is even interesting or why would an attacker target AI, two core reasons. Number one, AI by design connected to all the sensitive data sources in an organization. Users' data, source code, depends what the business, but in the end it's connected to that. And AI, more interestingly, is running on GPUs. Who knows how much costs a GPU per year? It costs 1 million. Why is an attacker would like to hold on that expensive infrastructure? Because now I can run my own crypto miner. And what we've seen when we found out this campaign is that crypto miners compete between themselves on that GPU. They try to kill each other process. And on those environments, we can also find keys, we could find wallet IDs, we could find really weird things that got on the VMs that host that. So in the end of the day, we like to think sometimes on AI as a black box. It's another piece of software. Next thing, this is from last month. Shai Hulud, anyone heard about it? So basically, it's a chain of couple of problems. Like the way that open source work, right? Like in the end of the day, there are some maintainers, right? To GitHub that goes through the npm package manager to the Maven, etc. And at some point, some let's call them like tired maintainers get in, push a lot of like valid code. At some point, they push like a piece of code that downloads malware at some point. And then you have like one version, and again, by just having your developer doing the work, pulling open source to and start coding, they are getting malware which is being deployed to every organization. And on that version of it was the SolarWinds. So again, just to give you another example, and there are more like the XZ, which is used for packaging, and like Shelltorch, which is another vulnerability in the inference server that can cause remote code execution. So the examples of all of these are out there, and they are, unfortunately, they're getting published every day. And you will ask yourself, okay, so, but there are so many controls, so none of them catch this? So the unfortunate answer is no. So what we have learned so far is that apps basically are still like very much like a blind spot. There is always like this question, like whenever I've been tasked with a vulnerability, I would ask myself, is it deployed? Is it in production now? Is it exploitable? Is it not being exploited? Like being able to answer these questions require like a very deep knowledge in security research, in threat hunting, knowing what to search, etc. And this is like very much not trivial in the market. The problem is that all the scanners that I showed before, like SAS, SCA, the thing that find vulnerabilities in the code that we write, or the thing that find vulnerabilities in the open source that we use, produce so many vulnerabilities that understanding exactly what's going on and what's important to fix, it's like finding a needle in the haystack, which basically never works, right? Like if I would have thought, like if you remember the story of the guy who dropped his disk on key with all of these bitcoins that he got, like which were worth millions, and he basically tried to find it in the trash can for I don't know how many years. Just recently said, I gave up. Same with vulnerabilities. It's just very much theoretical risk. And the runtime approach, which is important, it basically monitoring all the infrastructure, not the application. So now, what's the difference, right? Like, so I have my base OS, I have my image that I'm using, I have my server, my Linux, etc. And by monitoring the operating system, it's by design trying to find the symptoms, not the root cause. Because the exploit of my application started inside my Java. It started inside my Golang, my Python. But the symptoms that I will see, someone tried to access a sensitive file, or someone tried to open a reverse shell, which no one does. But someone tried to open a reverse shell, open a netcat, or do something on my workload. So basically, it's after the fact the developer is in. And this is like the big blind spot that the market, which called CDR, is trying to solve. The only way to do it, by the way, is doing something which is called like deep application inspection. Okay, so if you want to see inside it, if you want to know where the exploit takes place, you need to look inside the application. Now, the one of you that probably have been in this industry for 10 years will ask yourself, but wait, isn't this what Rust tried to do? By the way, Rust stands for Runtime, Application Security Protection, and it didn't work. In the end of the day, Rust, just as a concept, you take a piece of software, you embed it in your own software, it serves some sort of like a proxy, see that the application intended what to do. But if you think about it, it has stability issues. If I'm an engineering owner, I will never allow a third-party vendor to interject my work, let's say my code flows, and do something that I cannot allow. Like in the end of the day, I'm accountable to the runtime, to the resiliency of the application, and just putting this as party doesn't make sense. It adds friction. It doesn't cover like the pieces of software that I didn't write. Like many organizations don't have their own developers, right? They use contractors that are just deploying the app, so how to get visibility on that. eBPF, for the rest of you, who knows what the eBPF means? Anyone heard about this term? Okay, let's go, lesson in history. So, BPF is called Berkeley's packet filtering. It's the technology, basically, let's go back. It's a kernel module, a piece of software that sits very much low level in the operating system, that allows you to interact with the network. Ask, hey, where this packet came from? What is the source IP? Is that all the network security solution tool is based on that. That project has been extended, so it has no longer connection only to network, and essentially you can listen to any event that happens on the operating system. So if someone tried to write a file, if someone tried to do this and that. And this is de facto the standard today to do monitoring and observation in software. Netflix are using it, Chrome, there are so many. The Wiz, we of course, and this is like a core technology of ours, etc. So what have I done? So in the end of the day, all of these, like just to cover, just to summarize what I've said. And in the end of the day, eBPF, it's not a product, it's a foundation, right? It's a query, it's like a programming language. You can do so many things with it. You can do bad things, you can do stupid things, and you can do very advanced things. So it's like some sort of like a safe enabler to interact with anything that's going on the environment. So just to sum up, why runtime protection has become critical, and this is what you've seen. Like I've worked like for many years in the code side of the house, like how to secure applications and stuff like that, and measuring the risk, doing things from the code. But in the end of the day, what we're still seeing is that vulnerability exploitation still becomes the top risk. The nature of attacks, it's even becoming more advanced. It takes like from days to minutes to seconds to compromise one thing and get 1.5 billion. Code is constantly changing, right? Like with AI, without AI, just by the velocity which is required. So the static tools are becoming obsolete. They just don't give you like the right coverage you need. Number 3 is an interesting one. AI-generated code requires us to take a different approach about securing AI. We cannot think about the longest DLC. We need to think about what we see now and to observe how AI agents behave. And the last pillar is that still like all the security tools just leave like a huge gap of vulnerabilities that cannot be tested. Great. So how we can see inside an application? We said it's a problem. We said that someone tried to solve it. They couldn't. It didn't work. And now we are claiming that there is a new market that is aiming to solve that problem. So this is just a diagram of how an application behaves, right? Like you have the application. It's hosted inside an operating system.